stories of the week. Thanks for joining me on the show today, Bode. Good to see you again.
Yes, thank you for having me on the show, Rolake.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at what's happening in the US. There's a deadline looming tomorrow, October 1. Will they reach an agreement over this discretionary spending?
Well, it's looking unlikely, although the view is that if there is a shutdown, it's not going to be very extended, even as the weak quarter, just like you said, ends in stock markets. This looming shutdown is dampening the mood as October kicks off. Only just yesterday, to add insult upon injury, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he campaigned to block future pricey government spending bills. That's just the day before the government was set to shut down after disagreements in Congress stalled legislation to extend funding. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's stopgap measure to keep the government open for 31 days past the October 1 deadline was defeated. So we could soon have millions of people going unpaid, funding for Ukraine's war slashed basic operations in everything from parks, museums, collecting labor data, all disrupted. The transportation sector tends to be the most affected in the economy when we have these shutdowns. According to Goldman Sachs, they're saying that the shutdown would reduce 0.2% of quarterly annualized GDP growth for each week it endures. So let's see how it works. Financial markets have a lot on their plate. Fed narratives, high interest rates, rising treasury yields, rising oil prices, labor strikes, a tepid economy, slowing consumer spending. They're just shrugging this off as something that is self-inflicted and should just pass. But Moody is warning them that this could earn a negative credit rating and there could be repercussions. If Moody's strikes, we could see a situation where costs go up and another weight on the already tepid economy. Yeah. So there could be dips to buy for favored stocks, but certainly it's certainly not looking good as far as sentiment is concerned.
When you reel off that long list of issues, it doesn't sound like you're talking about the US, I will say. But I need to ask you, these ideological differences sometimes between the Republican Party and the Democrats, are they really just about ideology, or are these fundamental economic issues that need to be tackled? Because this is a highly politicized issue, right? And we've seen follows and shutdowns in the past, but it's becoming a bit too frequent.
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Certainly there's some ideological flavor to it. The spending pattern and the spending priorities of the Democrats are extremely different from what the Republicans want. So finding that balance and being able to get the right compromise is becoming even more difficult as we come to the elections just happening a few months' time. So a bit of both, but certainly it's not helpful for the economy.
Certainly tough times there for US legislators and the American people. Amazon is once again in the eye of the storm, being accused by the FTC of some, well, for want of a better term, dodgy practices. But it faces a fine, and it's around its antitrust actions in the market. The FTC, the consumer regulator, is afraid of big tech monopolizing. Is Amazon really just a scapegoat in what is a bigger pond of many tech companies potentially flouting some of these rules?
Well, in fairness to Amazon, the Federal Trade Commission is going after all of them. You remember the merger between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard? They gave a bit of a hard time. They didn't win that. There's a suit against Google. Tesla has also been sued. Amazon wants to be the one-stop shop for AI with that investment in Anthropic, for example. They actually want to be the one-stop shop for everything. And the combined edge that these companies have is just formidable. And what they're able to do, obviously the FTC, I think, need to watch a little bit closer and look for opportunities to try and ensure that customers in particular are not getting a bad deal. But I think that's going to be the real challenge because you have to be able to prove in the court or to the FTC that customers are not getting a good deal from these policies. Amazon say the very policies that the FTC believes is anti-customer is what helps customers keep going to them. But you know that we are all addicted to Amazon. We don't just think of anything else. We just go to Amazon and buy. Yeah. But FTC say that is not helpful. We could be getting better prices. And Amazon is very clever. They have not made a wrong step, and the FTC is waiting to catch them out somewhat. But we'll see. This is going to go for a long while, in my view. I don't think it's going to be resolved pretty soon. Already, FTC don't have any victories to claim, given their recent losses with Activision, Blizzard, and so on. And I think they definitely need a win somewhere, whether Amazon, Google, to show that they're doing their job.
Yeah, interesting. Some months back, Amazon was in the news over Prime, and the fact that you get on the Prime subscription and you can't really figure out how to get yourself out of the Prime subscription. Perhaps that needs to be investigated. But yeah, I mean, let's see how that evolves in the coming weeks. The U.S. auto workers strike. There's been some developments. You would have seen my business reads there. Stellantis wasn't part of the extension because they had agreed to some last-minute concessions. What do you make of the latest development on the auto workers strike? The
extension, I think, was going to happen, especially with the politicians wading into it, making things worse, in my view. Biden was picketing while Trump was saying there will be no union of auto workers if electric vehicles go ahead as Biden wants it to. So they're all playing the politics again, just like you said earlier. But this extension is also, they're being clever. They are limiting the number of workers on strike because they need a fund to be able to compensate workers during that time. 25,000 workers, I understand, will be walking off their job at Ford's Chicago assembly plant and GM's Michigan plant. Stellantis also was spared after some last-minute concessions. The 40% pay hike is not too much in my view, but they've been offered 20%. I think they will get maybe 30 in terms of how they eventually resolve this. But many themes are at play here. First, as we approach US elections, we will see increasing convergence of politics with the geoeconomics. Second, the climate change electric vehicle transition trajectory cannot be oblivious to the context and impact on workers. Definitely it has. And I think that's something that hasn't been quite well answered, and the workers want to get a resolution of those types of issues. And we're in a new post-COVID, more digital normal, typified by demand for different skill mix, high inflation, cost of living pressures, which result in a different worker-employee dynamic, but also noting that there is a shortage of workers in developed economies, which has put more power in employee hands. So the normal is a bit different, and this is a test, I think, for unionization. The optics of Biden on the picket line was countered by Ford Motors announcing that they were shutting down an EV plant, and of course, Trump saying nobody should be forced to buy an EV, and so on. The economy, given the very tepid growth outlook and other headwinds, cannot afford an extended strike. That's obvious, and I think we'll get a resolution next week, hopefully.
Yeah, interesting times. The transport sector, especially with the global energy transition, seems to be in the limelight over this issue. And we saw recently in the UK where Rishi Sunak had actually said he was going to pipe down on the push towards the energy transition and EVs as well. So, I mean, this could be part of a broader global trend, but seeing how it manifests in terms of these domestic disputes in the US is certainly quite interesting. Now, talking about the energy sector, NNPC in Nigeria, the national oil company, NNPC Limited, International Oil Companies, and Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board have all reached an MOU. Sounds very lovely. For a reduction in the contracting cycle. Is this going to help improve performance and efficiency in operations?
Well, the short answer is yes, it should, if it works. And when you are significantly reducing contracting cycle time for your tenders, whether selective or single sourcing, you will get reduced costs. It improves ease of doing business, it drives efficiency. It eventually translates to production, growth, increased revenues, and ultimately improved profitability. But what I hear in investigating this story is that setting performance targets or benchmarks for key processes is not new in NNPC Limited. It's been done before. The challenge has always been measuring and enforcement in a culture where performance management has been historically weak and unlikely to change under the current governance arrangements. What I think is needed is not an MOU trying to tweak what has been done, make it better, but a structural rethink, a fundamental restructuring with much less federal government or NNPC Limited participation in the commercial aspects of JV oil and gas activities. Government should either sell off the equity stake to private investors, domestic and international. And of course, it will also attract investment capital and get better efficiency. And if there should be government involvement at all, it should be minimal, but in a different kind of structure, similar to what we have in NLNG, the so-called incorporated JV. This kind of arrangement, you could second your executives to work in these IJ incorporated JVs, but they have autonomy to take decisions. They don't need to pass to a kind of NAPIMS for approval. The process is much faster, more transparent, strong business focus you typically get in the LLNG compared to an NNPCL, and far less unproductive interference, which speeds up the contractual cycle. So I think that's what they should be doing. Accelerating the privatization of NNPCL also helps leveling the playing field. It's also key to enhancing efficiency and making the industry more competitive for new investors, which I guess is what the government is trying to achieve. But this MOU looks like tinkering with the status quo, so I'm not quite sure where it's going.
Yeah. Well, we all want good partnerships in the industry, because look at Nigeria's production, well below where we should be in terms of capacity. So anything to drive the car forward, perhaps, is always a welcome good step and a good start. Well, great to be speaking to you as always, Bode Ososami, Arise business analyst.